Very first card we have is Fertile Campus. This card was spoiled by me, Ejecty, on stream. This card is a 3 cost, 2 yellow gem enchantment. It reads, if occupied at the start of your turn, occupying an adjacent friendly minions, get +1/+1. So I will say, in general, this card has not been super impressive to most people. It needs to be occupied at the start of your turn. So that's often very hard to pull off. You know, it gives the enemy a chance to deal with it first. And then even if it is, it's only affecting 1/1s next to you. So for instance, you think of something like an Alama Ring that you can just drop the next turn, which is going to affect your entire board. It's not reliant on something being on a specific spot. I know that some people have tried it like in synergy with Snake Dens, and that, I believe, feels kind of bad as well, because it will only buff the snake to the right of it. Because the snake to the left spawns before this enchantment's effect, essentially. The card feels pretty weak to me. I don't think it's very good. Q mode players have suggested small tweaks to it to maybe make it a bit better, but it hasn't seen a lot of play. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's left to right. You're correct. So it triggers left to right. So as it triggers left to right, so it spawns, it gets buffed, and then the snake to the right spawns and does not get buffed. You're right. I know my directions. Yeah, the snake has to already have spawned to get the buff. Once again, yeah, it hasn't been super impressive to us yet. We've suggested a few tweaks. We haven't even seen it do that well in draft either. Hopefully, it can get a bit more playable. As of right now, I would literally put Fertile Campus in the bottom tier. Yeah, like Izzy said, it's too slow for its mana cost. Especially when you can just play an Alama Ring the turn after, and it doesn't require you sticking it, and it stays out longer. It's just, they're just better cards that does what it wants to do. Alright. Next card we have is Loadout Armory. I want to make sure I always get it right, who spoiled it. This was spoiled by Mythgard Hub and Kryptik Gaming as kind of like a conglomerate. Noah wrote an article for Hub, and then we posted on Kryptik Gaming. This card is really fucking good. So this card is a 3 cost purple enchantment, 1 gem. When you play an item on it, or play a minion on it, it's not discard fodder though. So you add an Armature of Ages item to your hand when a minion is created here. Really quick, we're going to look at the Armature of Ages item. That is this item. So you give a minion +2/+2 and armor 1. All that for 2 mana. So this card can get out of hand really fast. Yeah, the Armature is very strong. So yeah, that's what Armature does. Yeah, this card... I don't have any snowball emotes. You're not even subbed to me. Get out of here, motherfucker. This card... very good. Like, even if I had a snowball emote, he couldn't use it, right? Yes, the Armature, super strong. And the card itself only costs 3. It's seen, obviously, a lot of play. Blurple loves this card. Like Arrow says, it can snowball out of control real fast. The minion created here does not... it can be ephemeral, which might need a change. Yeah, I think the card will probably end up nerfed. The card still feels too good to me. I think it's actually one of the best cards from the expansion. It's funny that we started with a really crappy F level enchantment. I would put Loadout Armory as an S tier card as of right now. Yeah, the card is very good. The Armature, the item it gives you, very, very strong. You can really snowball quickly, as Arrow says, out of control with it. I would not be surprised to see the card nerfed later. So yeah, that is Armature of Ages, once again spoiled by Mythgard Hub and Kryptik Gaming. Or that was Loadout Armory, which gives you an Armature of Ages. I have seen that rune. This card next to Plateau. So you place something on Guardian Plateau, it spawns. Since this card doesn't have an ephemeral clause, then the token spawns and gives you the armature. So yeah, it definitely a good card. I think you'll see it. I think if any like deck is purple and rainbow for 100%, it's obviously in there. But even a lot of purple decks, I would not be surprised to see them running like one or two, even if they're not rainbow. Yeah, very good card. Next up, we have Hyperfit Ultra Gym. So this card was spoiled by the rhinos themselves, I believe. Yeah, so this card was spoiled by rhinos. They put it up on their social media. This card has seen some changes, but overall, it's still a pretty good card. You know, no one is surprised that this combos super well with Doper. If you put down a Doper on turn 1 and then put a Hyperfit Ultra Gym under him, he becomes quite the issue. The focused one makes it interesting in that it's both a defensive and an aggressive card. You know, you're building up your HP, but then the focused one allows you to race as well, which is, I think, an underrated aspect of the card. I think it naturally pairs well with Doper. It can pair well with some other stuff too. I would not be surprised to see this showing up in like blue-yellow enchantment decks. Maybe not 4, but definitely like 1 or 2 maybe. Just to have a yellow enchantment to burn, and it buffs you up pretty well, especially if you have things like Singing Stones or Llama Rings to combo with it. Rune says Zolia loves this card. Yeah, I mean, I guess getting Zolia a lot of HP. See, I don't really know if you want to put a snake on it, Izzy. The thought to me is you want to put cards. Oh, the Alpha Strike snake. They meant like from a snake den. But yeah, so you want high value cards to up their HP to make them very hard to trade with. But if ignored, they get a swing and hit face for an extra damage. Very good card. It can effectively be +1/+2 sometimes. It combos well with a lot of things yellow tries to do. I will say, if the deck running it kind of misses their 1-drop, it definitely feels weaker. You can't just put this down, obviously. But, putting it under a lot of cards is pretty good. I would put the gym at B tier right now. I think it is a card that will see play. It's even fine with Maze. Yeah, that's a good point too. Putting this under Maze the next turn makes it so the Maze can draw a lot sooner. Another thing to note is if they block your Maze straight on so that they can trade into it, Focus now, with the changes, does work with 0 attack. So for instance, if you put down Maze turn 1, let's say they put like a pup across from it, and you put this under it, the pup can't actually swing into it. He will die. So, very interesting with the changes to Focused. So I think it's a solid card. It's not, amazing. It's not gonna, win a bunch of games, but I think it's solid. I think it'll see play in rainbow lists that have yellow. And you probably won't run 4 of them. But maybe. I don't know. Alright, next. We are looking at Home Field Advantage. I think this card is a very good card. It's a 3-cost, 1-gem green card. Occupying and adjacent minions have +1/+1. So it sort of is the effect of playing 3 Cairn Henges in 1 turn. So the mana it costs is equivalent to 3 Cairn Henges. What's interesting about Home Field Advantage is the enchantment itself only occupies 1 lane. So the 2 adjacent lanes can have other enchantments on them. So you can see like Cairn Henges next to it. You can see Demo Speedways next to it. And that just really like packs a punch. Now obviously it means you're grouping your units, but yeah, and that's I've seen some very good play with this card. Like I said, obviously it means you're grouping your units, but that's not always like the worst thing. And if you're grouping your units because they're getting buffed, it can be like a decent thing, right? You know, people might talk about like, oh, canines might like this type of card. Canines probably would. But there are a lot of other, you know, color combos. I think this will see play like in blue-green enchantments a lot. You know, I think it's a very good card. Exactly. So, you know, you don't want to group units, but if you're grouping units and they all have +1/+1, along with any other buffs you can get there with other enchantments or, like, yeah, if they are canines or type things. Exactly. The card is very good. And this was spoiled by Mythgard Hub. So they spoiled this one. They tweeted out about this one. So that's a home field advantage. I think it's a good card. I think it'll see lots of play. I think it'll frustrate a lot of people with how good it is. The way it can stack with other enchantments, I think will catch people off guard. And I would put this card in A tier, honestly. Alright. Next card. So this card was spoiled by me. This is you know, if anyone watched my video, if anyone saw my stream talking about this card is my favorite card in the expansion. Ruby Raider is a 2-cost double red gem minion. It has Forge Rush. So if you forge it, if you burn a copy, if you burn it, then it and its copy get Rush. And the Breach is deal 1 damage to all other minions. Remember, that does include your own minions. People have been known to kill their own minions with this thing. I think Rune said when I spoiled it that he hasn't been impressed with this card. I think Rune just doesn't know how to play rush cards. I think the card is solid. I don't think it's, you know, people worry like, oh, it's a fucking, you know, it's a 3/2. It's a 3/2 with rush that costs 2 mana. You know, is that going to be too good? The Forge makes it so it doesn't feel that bad. The fact that it's in red has a lot of, you know, 1 health minions. So there's a good chance that it is negatively affecting them. You know, it will blast away their own Wings of Abaddon. It kills their own Hellions from 7-Ring Ritual. It kills pups. So, like, you know, red can't just slam this thing and say go, you know? But it's also been very fun to, like, clear out, you know, groups of minions, you know, to clear away for the raider and then, you know, be able to blast a bunch of minions. It allows, like, trades from across the map or from across the board. I've had situations I've had situations where someone will, for instance, like chump block a bigger unit with like a smaller unit, and then Ruby Raider can swing on the other side of the board and like clear the way. Yeah, I think the card is very good. Like I said, it's my favorite card. You know, it is a rare, so it's a lot of times you might burn a copy and never see the other copy when you go to play it again. I don't know if it deserves A tier necessarily. I love the card, but you don't really play it on curve. You know, it's not overpowered or anything either. I think it's just a very solid card. I think for now I'll put it in B. We'll look at a few more cards and see if, like, for whatever reason we feel like it could maybe move up. But yeah, Ruby Raider, very good card. Alright, so next we are going to be looking at the card Cross Training. The flavor is S tier on Ruby Raider. Is accurate. Cross Training, I believe, was spoiled by Steph. Yes. Steph Donhart spoiled Cross Training. Cross Training is a 1-cost, 1-gem purple spell. You give a minion Swift, and the top minion in your deck gets Agile permanently. This card has some cool art, but I think the card is just okay. You know, Swift is interesting. there are definitely, there are definitely minions that can make use of Swift. The first one that comes to mind, obviously, is Shinobi of Smoke. Like, if your Shinobi of Smoke has Swift, you spent one less mana to be able to teleport him around. So, that's a big one that comes to mind. You almost would rather have Jaunt a lot of times, unless you're putting it on a card that does have Teleport already, like I said. So, I think, if you get this thing on your Shinobi of Smoke, you could just run away with the game, possibly. Your top minion getting Agile is very hit or miss. In theory, it could probably be okay with Pentacle as well. I think about this because Dazed is already in here bitching about it. And, I don't even think the card's that good. But, it would be pretty easy to put it on a unit and then put Pentacle on it and then be able to hop a space and swing and kill something. That being said, I don't think the card is that good. It very often could be a dead card in your hand. There's nothing you want to give Swift to. There's nothing you need to give Swift to. There's a good chance that the top minion of your deck getting Agile is like a Steam Bun that you're going to sacrifice anyway. So that type of scenario kind of hurts. Then again, it could also give, your Daigoju Agile or some shit. I don't know. There are definitely, obviously, good things to get Agile. I think in general, the card is just okay to me. I have not seen it used that well in Q mode. I'll say that. I remember facing, I want to say I was facing Steph a few times when she was getting ready to spoil this video, and every game she had the card in her hand, she burnt it as a purple gem. So it's and she had built a deck, I think, to specifically try to use it for her video. So I'm not super sold on it. Daze thinks all purple cards are better than they are. I'm going to give it an E right now. I do not think it's that good of a card. Exactly, Zithwan. Agile Maze. It's the type of, you give your top minion Agile, and then your top minion doesn't want Agile and is useless with Agile. It's, and so then what? Are you going to spend, mana using Foresight to get your top minion Agile, and then also, pay 1 mana to get something on your board Swift? It's a bit too random, and Swift itself, like I said, yes, I mean, Izzy will use Foresight to do that. Izzy will use Foresight instead of playing 1,000 good cards. Yeah, so in a blue-purple deck, I could see them maybe running 1. And like I said, the biggest reasoning to me is Shinobi of Smoke. If you put it on Shinobi of Smoke, you spent 1 less mana to teleport him around the map. And, now it's permanent. If Shinobi of Smoke constantly has that Swift, he could become an issue. So I think Shinobi of Smoke to me sounds like the ideal spot where this card wants to go on. Is to give your Shinobi of Smoke Agile, let him teleport around the map, killing shit without, taking any damage. Next is Cold-Blooded Killer. Cold-Blooded Killer was spoiled by Terminal. Thanks for the spoiler. Cold-Blooded Killer is a 3-cost purple single gem minion. He has stealth, so he does fit into that 3-cost stealth area that Smoke, Shinobi of Fire, Shinobi of Wind all fit in. All the Shinobi. He has stealth naturally, so he's going to come down stealth always. He has Forge, where he's going to get Alpha Strike, and then during your turn, so it's not quite like a Shinobi of Smoke, but it's similar. So he's going to get Alpha Strike during your turn. And then he has, after killing another minion in combat, you're going to add a Death Mark item to your hand. So the Death Mark item I have over here. Death Mark it's an ephemeral 1-cost item, no color. And you give a minion Demise, that's a typo, it should say loses 4 life. So once your Cold-Blooded Killer gets a kill, essentially, in combat, Oses. Once your Cold-Blooded Killer gets a kill in combat, you're going to get this Death Mark. You can then put it on an enemy minion, and once that minion dies, the opponent is going to lose 4 life. So, yeah, I think Cold-Blooded Killer is a pretty cool card. He's got great stats for the 3 slot. He's a 4/3, so he can trade up well. You know, if he's forged, once again, he's a rare, so forging him doesn't happen all the time. But if he's forged, he will get Alpha Strike as well during your turn. It's very, like I said, it's very similar to Smoke if he gets forged. Obviously, Smoke will never take any damage. Alpha Strike does similar type things, unless the minion you're attacking has more HP than you do attack. Cold-Blooded Killer, I think it's a cool card. I love the art on it. I think it's cool to have another... It's cool to add one more 3-cost stealth minion, you know, to purple. The more they have, the cooler that type of deck becomes, where you're like... You are unsure of what they put down. You are unsure of how to play around it. Do you block it because you think it's, you know, the Shinobi of Fire? Do you play away from it because you think it's this guy? You know, there's a lot going on for him. I think it's a pretty cool card. I kind of put it in the same tier as a Ruby Raider right now, I think, where I would put it like a solid B tier. And it's another card to me that could possibly be A. Yeah, I think it's a good card. Good solid card. I think it'll find its way into a lot of purple decks. Next, we have Braggy's Ballad. If I remember correctly, this is spoiled by KG's Rune. Correct. So yeah, Rune in chat spoiled this one. Braggy's Ballad is a 3-cost double blue spell where you will draw 3 cards and then you're going to choose a non-ephemeral card from your hand to shuffle back into your deck. So there's something to be said. Yeah, well then it would be too good. I think that, you know, obviously that's the point of it. So like there's something to be said about 1-cost draw or 1 gem draw for a Brainstorm, for instance. This card is pretty much purely better than Brainstorm, except obviously the gem amount. So it's going to have a hard time in 3-color decks. Any blue deck... That's something to note as well, Rune, and we'll get there. Any blue deck, I think, is 100% going to run Braggy's Ballad over Brainstorm. Brainstorm isn't that good as it is. Braggy's Ballad allowing you to draw 3... Yeah, so if somehow you draw 3 ephemeral cards, nerf to notarize reality. Yeah, you're right, Rose. Yeah, if your whole hand is ephemeral, somehow, let's say for whatever reason your whole hand is ephemeral, you'll keep all the cards. I think it's a very good card. Obviously, drawing 3 is always going to be better than drawing 2. And especially, you know, in some of these blue decks where it's like you have a card that you don't want. Like, you know, let's say you have a Frecky Scout in hand and it's turn 8. You don't want that Scout anymore. Being able to draw 3 and then send that back is very good. All for 3 mana. It's a very good draw spell. Like I said, I think it won't see as much play in 3-color decks. But beyond that, I think if blue wants a draw that's like not rainbow, this is the card they will run. You know, period. It lets you draw 3 blue. Like Magnara says, you can run conditional cards because then you can send them back if you don't want them. People have talked about, you know, if you, like, even in rainbow, if you redrew like a burnt enchantment that you don't want anymore, you can send it back in. Even in normal rainbow, if it's an enchantment, for instance, that you haven't burned, you can send enchantments back to your deck and it, you know, gives you a better chance to proc your draws. I think the card will pretty much be in any blue deck. I think it'll go into any blue deck that wants to draw. I think it's a good card. I think it'll see a decent amount of play because of it. Okay. Next card. Alright, so we have another blue card. This one is a 6-cost. I would not run this and Brainstorm. I think Brainstorm kind of should get out of any deck with Braggy's Ballad. Okay, 6 cost, blue enchantment, 3 gems. It reads, while occupied, all your minions have +2 and +0. I think at first people look at this card and they go, well, fuck. It's a troll that just buffed everything. And that's not exactly true. No. See, and it's crazy that all these people are saying this. Pretty much everyone in Q mode sort of disagrees with you. We have not seen this card be used a lot. Teleport does not mean swift. No, it does not give a free movement. I don't know if it's unplayable, as Daze is saying. This card does not give the free movement that Troll gives. Without the free movement, the card is just okay. If it gave free movement, it would be way too good. I think everyone knows that at this point. Okay, so yeah, let's say you do run Foscrim. That means you have to have Bridge already out, and then play the Foscrim, right? Now, granted, that's a possibility. Blurple Ramen. Yeah, and so like I think there are definitely spots where it can go. Or yeah, just run all Swift. Run cross training. So yeah, obviously you're not playing both Foscrim and Bridge on the same turn, because that's almost impossible for blue Rainbow to get up to 9 mana. And like 5 blue gems. Daze is overreacting just a bit, I will say that. But the card is not that good. It's very expensive to essentially give... Yeah, it's true. If you play Horn, then Bridge, it's good. There are things that can make the card good. But it does give +2/+0 to everything, which can't be awful. You know, +2/+0 to all your units is okay. Is it worth 6 mana? Probably not. Is it cool because you know, like you Arrow said, you played Horn and then you dropped Bridge? So now everything has their 2 actions and they can like teleport around? Sure. But to me, Bridge is not that good. It will not see a lot of play for the cost it is. That's my opinion. Days Undoing's opinion is that it goes in F tier, right there next to Fertile Campus. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think it is a D tier card. The 2v2 idea is interesting. 2v2, it could be kind of cool in the middle lane in 2v2. But once again, you know, it's 6 mana to be okay. You know what? I almost want to put it in E. Like, Bridge is really close to being an E to me. What was D last time? Is Bridge worse than Duoflex? Nah, Bridge is probably about the same as Duoflex. Nah, we'll put it D for now. It might change. Yeah. Bridge, just okay. Spoiled by, I know I definitely forgot. It was spoiled by Laser Jisson on his Twitter. He gave clues up until the spoiler. So yeah, that was spoiled by Laser Jisson. Next, we have Titus. I mean, we have Battle Ball Kicker. He is definitely not Titus from Final Fantasy X. Battle Ball Kicker is an orange 4 cost, double gem. His awaken is you can pay 2 mana to give another minion stunned until the end of its next turn. So, a few things to note. One, it's only on awaken. So, if you play this card on turn 4, you don't have the 2 mana. It's not like next turn you can kick your ball at someone. It's only when he comes into the field. If you have the mana to kick your ball at someone, They are stunned until the end of its next turn. That is a long time to be stunned. That's why the ball looks like this, clearly. Yeah, it's funny. The first iteration of it just said the card is stunned, and we like legitimately thought like it was like, what? Does it get stunned forever? But no, like the minion is stunned until the end of the minion's next turn. So yeah, a single turn, the minion's single turn. So Arrow makes a good point. He says no one plays the card in Q mode but him, and that is because Arrow has found a pretty good home for it in orange-green Necro. Necro allows you to cheat out this card and stun something across the field. It comes down as a 5/4 at that point. You've only paid 2 mana to do the stunning. So, yeah, I think the card is pretty meh otherwise. Like, essentially you need to play it on turn 6 to use it. And there are better things to be playing on turn 6. But if you can cheat this card out, it is probably pretty good. I will also note, I think it might be okay in draft and arena. It has a decent body. Sometimes, you have extra mana floating around in draft and arena. I was surprised this card did not get a forge ability. So Days confirms it's pretty good in draft, so that's good. Yeah, I was surprised that this card did not end up with a forged ability, because it felt like if it did have one, maybe it would see more play. I think as of now, the card is okay. It's decent in draft, and if you can cheat it out with like a Necro, then it's cool in Necro. Beyond that, I think it's just Tidus from Final Fantasy X, but if he was an angel. And everyone knows that Tidus from Final Fantasy X is a fucking loser. C tier. Okay. Next up, we have Westingshire Vandals. Oh, wait. I didn't give you who spoiled Battle Ball Kicker. That was spoiled by Steph Donhart as well. Sorry about that. Westingshire Vandals was spoiled by Wholesome. Alright, Vandals. It's a 3-cost blue minion. Yeah, when you play it, it's super fucking loud, and that does make a difference. Like, scaring your opponent, there is something to be said for that. 3-cost, single gem, blue minion. It has Overrun, so natural Overrun. Its breach is it deals 3 damage to each artifact the opponent controls. Calling it blue artifact hate feels really, interesting to me. Like, it has that breach, and that's cool and all, but that's not the reason anyone's playing this card. The reason someone's playing this card is because it has 4 attack, and it has Overrun. Like Plague just said. Its 2 health makes it pretty vulnerable everything. So you kind of need to have it on, like, enchantments. Rune thinks it's going to be a sleeper. I think Rune is wrong. I think the Rebel synergy doesn't matter at all. I think, yeah, it could maybe see some play, like, in blue-orange Rebels. It is common. I don't know if it'll see play, like, in blue Popper, though. There are probably better choices. Its biggest weakness is that it just dies. It just dies to everything. It's only got 2 health. So you're playing this 3 cost with 2 health, and it just dies. Getting enchantments under it, getting it buffed by, I guess, Rebel Synergy, could definitely do something for it. But to me, the card is pretty average. Rune notes that blue 3-drops are bad. They are. That's why you play other colors and drop their 3-drops instead. It does take a long time. It's slow. The animations are slow. There are usually just better things to play. I don't know if it'll see a lot of play. as people have mentioned, you know, blue runs enchantments. If you get it on an enchantment, then it has overrun, then maybe it'll do something. If you're playing it on curve, not on an enchantment, it seems pretty meh. I think I disagree. I think it's better than Berserker. I think natural overrun will always have a place. You know, that can maybe make it relevant. You know, you can put this, you know, if you manage to get like a giant stairway under it, well, then you've got yourself a 7/4 with overrun, which is it's an okay unit. I think it'll see about as much play as the bridge, I guess. It will definitely be a card that I think could also surprise people. Yeah, well, true. But it's a card that I think could surprise people, where if it comes down and you're not necessarily ready for it, it could surprise you, but I think in general it's going to be pretty weak. Some people might disagree, but that's been my opinion. The only reason I would say it's better than Berserker is because it has this card has overrun. Yeah, so if, for instance, you get the gym under it. It's a 4/4 focus 1 with overrun. That's not an awful card. But then you've also committed 5 mana to that spot. That's enough for Vandals. Next, we are going to go to Wailing Yokai. This card was spoiled by Toonstar. Thank you, Toonstar, for this spoiler. Wailing Yokai is very interesting. It's a 2-cost, single gem, purple minion. The art is pretty terrifying. It is a 2/2. So it has teleport, and then at the end of its turn, you're going to deal 1 damage to your opponent for each minion that threatens it. A minion is threatened by the 3 minions in front of it, or 2 if it's on the side. But it's like anything that can essentially attack it is what's considered threatening it. I don't know. It is hard for me to evaluate this card, and I will say why. It started out really good, and this is like a toned down version. I also don't play purple because purple's stupid. No. It started out very good, and this is a bit of a toned down version, but the teleport to me makes it very interesting. In theory, if you're blocking 3 units, it's doing 3 damage at the end of your turn. If you're blocking a single unit, you're doing 1 damage and still blocking. The ability to teleport is interesting. You know, you can put this card down on one side. If someone doesn't want to threaten it, for instance, to take the damage, you can teleport it over to its other minions, then make it a blocker. You can teleport it onto enchantments, then make it strong. I think the card probably, you can also just hit face. Yeah, if they say, oh, I don't want to threaten it, then you just hit face. Yeah, so I think the card is good. I have a hard time knowing how good it is. I don't think it's coming through the window. I think it's coming through the TV, Dazed. Which is scarier, right, than it coming through the window. It's hard for me to properly say how good this card is right now. So I'm gonna put it. I think it could be B tier. I'm gonna put it in C tier right now because I'm not sure how good it is. I think it's still probably a decently played card. I think it'll have spots where it can be played, but I don't know. Like it's not an auto include in purple decks. It's not, you're not going to run it over a lot of other cards, but maybe aggressive purple decks. It does have Spirit Synergy. Thank you, Zithwan. You are correct. Spirit Synergy is important for our S tier from last time, which is Gloombringer. So, you can draw it off of Gloombringer, which is really good. So its Spirit Synergy does help it. I think the card without said Spirit Synergy in like an aggressive type deck, it's very hard to judge. I think it definitely is either B or C tier. I'm hesitant to put it up in B right now. because there are also just better spirits than this card. I'm going to put it in C for now, but this card could surprise me. It could be better than I am thinking. That's just how I feel about it currently. Alright. Next, we have Vulcan Blade Gorger. This is a red cost, or 1 cost red minion. When you play a card that has been forged, deal 2 damage to your opponent. So, one, it's funny. People say, oh, Minotaur is now pushed out. And eventually Minotaur was going to get pushed out because there's no reason to run Minotaur over this card. You know, before you could be like, oh, what if you want 15 1-drops? So it's a 1 cost 2/2. And the forged, when you play a card that's been forged, is not like a small amount. If it goes really well in decks that specifically want forged cards, obviously. So I think I'd rather still play Pup over this card in a lot of red decks. But if you're playing, you know, multiple red 1-drops, obviously this is the second one. I think you might be overvaluing the card a little, but I think it's definitely a good card. Forge, you know, once again, something to note is it's when a card that has been forged is played. So that means the card has to have already had 1 copy of it burned. So the card itself, I think it's very good. I think it'll definitely see play. Forged decks love it. You know, forged decks are going to love it. Aggressive red decks are going to love it. I think Pup is still better, but you're probably playing this over the 2/1 with armor. I think you're playing this over Iron Flesh in aggressive decks, just because of its stats. So yeah, if you play a forged card, you're going to deal damage, but as far as its actual power level goes, it's tough to say. I think right now, it can probably fit in A, because it can go in aggressive red decks. It can fight. It can do face damage, but to me, this card is an A tier, possibly B. It could definitely be a B tier card to me. The face damage push is cool, but yeah, that is how I view this card. And once again, as Arrow mentioned, it's true. You know, I think everyone should have those tummy goals because she is fucking jacked. As Arrow mentioned, you know, you can't look at a card for, you know, if all this happens and falls into place, then this is just the best card ever. And I think Caravan Brass is a card that was viewed a lot like that last time. And we ranked Caravan Brass as a B, actually. And Caravan Brass actually might be an A, the more, like, we've played it. But, like, you know, you can't judge a card by its best when, like, you know, there are a lot of times where the best is not what happens. I think A tier for now. Possibly B. Alright. Did I mention who spoiled that card? I feel like I forgot. That card was spoiled by Terminal. So, thank you, Terminal, for that spoiler. Alright, next. We have Strength in Numbers. This is a 1-cost orange spell. All your minions get +1/+1 until the end of your turn. All your minions with Forged get an additional +1/+0 until the end of the turn. I think the card is decent. I think obviously where you're going to see it is in a really aggressive, like, Zealot list. The problem is Zealots will still have the same problem they always have, which is they just die sometimes. And so both Steph and Arrow I like the points. I mean, Arrow's point is that logic is smarter than all of us, which is accurate. But Steph's point is pretty good. This card can make your Recruiter whiff. It's a spell that buffs stuff. It's not awful. It's not a permanent buff, obviously. And when you look at it, it does look pretty good. I am not sold on this card, and I have not been sold on it, because at best you're looking at you know, trying to buff a few zealots that you have on the field, or, you know, some small aggro strategy. There's a good chance that because of their low HP, they might still die to whatever is blocking them as it is. Forged is a very interesting mechanic in that Forged isn't good in aggro decks. You know, the whole purpose of Forged is you've burnt a copy of that card and then managed to play either the same one that you redrew or another copy of that card. So all your minions with Forged getting it doesn't really represent a whole lot of threats to me. So it definitely can be okay, and it might cause some blowouts where you just run over your opponent with it. It also might just, you know, present nothing. There's a good chance your zealots are just going to die the next turn. There's a good chance that they still die to the blocker that's blocking them. So I think it's another card where people look at it and see the maximum potential of the card. To me, the card definitely will see play in really aggressive lists. I don't think you can count the Forge buff too much. I'm going to put it here for now. One sec, I did not say who spoiled this one. Strength in Numbers was spoiled by Mythgard Hub. Thank you once again, Hub. I'm going to put it in C for now. I'm not sold on this card. It just doesn't feel that good. It kind of feels like card disadvantage to a certain point. And this might just go back to the fact that enchantments are so much better. Enchantments are just so much better than spells because they persist throughout the rest of the game. Spells do not. This spell, you know, this spell doesn't even offer a permanent buff like some of the blue ones. I don't think you'll see the Forge come into play too often. And that's, I mean, maybe there are a bunch of Forge 1-cost minions 3 years from now. I don't know. Right now, I think the card is just okay. It's not awful. It will cause some blowouts, but I don't know. I'm not completely sold on it. I could be wrong though. Maybe Orange Zealots will be the best deck. Profane Locus. This card was spoiled by Zoj pretty recently. Profane Locus is bad. The only thing it really beats is Journey of Souls. Yeah. As Arrow said, you know, it makes Journey players really sad because they're swinging. They're swinging, and if they attack through this lane... So, let me read it out. Sorry. 2 cost, purple enchantment, single gem. Once per turn, before combat, move to a friendly, unenchanted lane that is being attacked. Minions attacking through this lane get ephemeral until the start of their next turn. At the end of your opponent's turn, if this enchantment hasn't moved, so essentially if the opponent didn't attack, then you banish the top card of your opponent's deck. So you're playing this on turn 2, and it's not actually accomplishing anything the turn you play it. The minions that swing through it are only ephemeral until the start of your next turn. Until the start of their next turn, sorry. If you don't kill the minion, you don't actually, like, it becomes unephemeral. So it just goes back to normal. So, you know, in theory, are you playing this? I don't know when you're playing this safely. To me. As Arrowbear said, you know, it affects Journey of Souls. It doesn't really even affect other decks. Like, it's a tech card at best. It's a tech card at best to beat on Journey of Souls, right? I mean, so the worst part about it is, Days, it doesn't really do anything. So, like, it moves under, like, a lane, but, like, it doesn't do anything. Like, so really, the card is designed as a tech against Journey of Souls, to me. How often you want to tech in an answer to a certain path like Journey of Souls, which is really only run with, like, red-orange right now, is pretty low. And as someone who plays red-orange, I'm going to tell you, just, you shouldn't run this card. It's clearly bad. there's not really time to play the card. There's not really a whole lot of value you get out of it a lot of times. A lot of times, I don't know how important is it? Like, how important is it to banish the top card of your opponent's deck? Days gets it. Like Arrow said, it's good against Journey, but even then, if you missed your 1-drop, is this what you're going to play on turn 2 against, like, someone that's hitting you in the face? That seems pretty bad to me. Especially because you're making their minion ephemeral until their next turn. Like, what, are you going to kill it somehow? Your turn? I don't think it's good. It's like, cool that it's like, oh, I moved under you. Ha ha ha. But I don't think it's a good card. Yeah. That's what I have to say about Profane Locus. Next, we have Nameless Poet. Who spoiled this monstrosity? Was spoiled by Mythgard Hub. So once again, thank you to Hub. Nameless Poet is kind of cool, I think. So it's a 5-cost green single gem. Demise. Return the bottom spirit minion from your boneyard into this lane with Ephemeral. You can sack it if you choose, and if you do sacrifice it instead of just using its demise, the return minion gets +2/+2 and warded. Arrow has talked to this card probably better than I can, because this is his jam. Arrow has not been entirely impressed with the Poet. The problem is, it costs 5. It's a 3/5, and you have to sack it to then accomplish something, and it's only bringing back spirits. So, as someone said, what are you bringing back? Baku Bogeyman? Like, are you bringing back? Are you bringing back the fanatical spirits you binned? It's yeah. See, that's what Riss was doing with it. And spoiler alert, she did not win most of those games. The card is interesting. I'll give it that. It's an interesting card, but you have to, yeah. It's like everyone who tried to run purple green spirits started with Nameless Poet in the deck and then went, huh, this card's too slow for 5 mana to not really get a whole lot of value. I think I'm gonna take it out. Sure, Otono, but like, for 5, you're spending way too much mana to bring back your Necro. Like, you could just play Wake the Bones to bring back your Necro. You could play another Necro to bring back your Necro. So, I mean, everyone comes up with the best thing it can do. Yeah, like if it hits Vixen, that's kind of cool, I guess, that your Vixen is now a 4/7 warded with Deadly. And then what if it doesn't hit Vixen? The art is very good. And it's interesting that Days says Ravenous She, because I actually think Ravenous She has been the most consistent good card with Poet from people testing it. Because, like, Ravenous She warded is kind of like... No one plays fucking Headless one, Zithwan. I'm not... Poet is a cool idea that... in practice, we have not been super impressed with because it costs 5 mana. And you have to bin that card. You have to spend a turn binning that card. It's just better to play Necro a lot of times because it doesn't have to be some shitty card like Ravenous She that you're bringing back. Yeah, as Steph said, like on turn 5, there are just other things you want to play. And don't give me, like, I think Poet is the type of card that it'll work really well, like once or twice, maybe against like newer players, or like, it can high roll really hard in a game, and people are gonna come in and be like, this shit is overpowered. It brought back, I don't even know Baku's stat line because that's how much I care about that card, but it was warded and had +2/+2, so like it's just way too good, and you'll just be surprised is all. So I think the card is fine. It's not the amazing Necro synergy that people first think when they see it because of the Spirit disclaimer, but the Spirit disclaimer is probably a good thing. So you need to remember the Spirit disclaimer on it. You can't just jam it in blue-green turbo. Alright, next. Oh, we have a good boy. This little guy was spoiled by Wholesome, our resident doggo expert. Canine. Canine is a forge, or is a blue, one cost blue, single gem, and it has forge +1/+1. Wow, such hot takes, Izzy. It's an auto include in all canine decks. Thank you. Izzy is coming in with the hottest of takes. As Arrow is saying, this card is very high rolling. If you open with 2 of this card, you're playing a 3/2 on turn 1. A 3/2 on turn 1 is a good card, especially if it's played with an enchantment afterwards, with, canines afterwards that buff it. I think Canine is a very good card. I think it'll see a lot of play in a lot of blue decks that don't want to run Scout, just for the Forge effect. A 3/2 on turn 8 that you drew is a lot better than a 2/1. And I think that's what we're going to notice the most from it. I think it's a very good card. Do the Forge effects snowball? Some of them do. And this is a good example of one that can snowball. There are others that can. So, at that point, you're assuming that you've burnt another canine, right, Otono? It has to have been forged. Yeah, Forge effects. Alright, so Forge effects do not stack. And Blade Gorger. Sure, that's if it's been forged, though. So once again, we're completely relying on the high rolliness. Blade Gorger only does damage if the card is forged, which means a copy of it has been burnt. And yeah, then if you're doing the dream, the dream would be to play another Blade Gorger and play this on turn 2 as well. And do 4 damage to face. But yeah, so it can high roll. This is unsurprising. Yeah, I think Canine is a very good card. I think we'll see a lot of play in a lot of blue decks. Okay, next. We have Benedict Cumberbatch. This is Canine Handler. So the Handler... Okay, well, first of all, you can clearly see that the art is very similar between these two. Canine is off over here doing his own thing. Canine Handler is a very good card that I think will be run in every green deck, regardless of whether or not they are canines. Because its Forge effect is it gets Awaken. Sorry, so it's a green 2-cost single gem. Its Forge effect is it gets Awaken, draw your next canine minion. Therefore, it can draw itself. So 1, you will see this card played in canine decks. 2, you will see this card played in all Forge decks. And 3, you will see this card played in most green decks. A card that can tutor itself is amazing. If you play 1, draw 1, and then play the next one, they both then have armor from each other, because they can give each other armor, because adjacent canine minions have armor 1. It is definitely worth splashing in green. When people talk about ROG Forge, this is the green they're talking about. This is the green that comes up in that type of environment. It's very splashable. You can run it in Forge type decks. You can run this card almost anywhere. Everyone pretty much knows quickly how it can tutor itself, and Rune mentioned it's S tier, and I agree. The card is very good. I think it'll see loads of play. There'll probably be cool combinations with it. Yeah, like Rune mentioned, using Root of the World. It's just a very good card. Yeah, 3 of these plus Vixen is another thing. Tutoring Vixen's very good. People have mentioned it tutors Cerberus, which is, interesting. So if you're running like a red-green deck, you're finding Cerberus with this card. Interesting stuff that it can draw. It can reliably draw a mythic, essentially. Once you get a Forge copy of it, then you're drawing all your canines, essentially, if you build your deck right. I think last tier list had 27 cards. I think this one is going to have like 23 or something. Did I mention who spoiled Canine Handler? I don't think I did. So I'm going to mention that first. Canine Handler was spoiled by Rune, KG's very own. This card, this card was way too good. Now it almost might need a slight buff. So Doubling Dice was spoiled by Hazoj. It is a 4-cost double gem artifact in orange. It starts with a single energy. You and your opponent reveal a card in hand. If their combined mana cost is even, you deal energy damage to your opponent, and then you double your energy. If odd, you discard your card. It used to only be 2 mana, and it had more than twice the durability, didn't it? I think it had 14 durability. Yeah. So it was way too good, because you couldn't kill it, and you could just play it on turn 2, and eventually you would just murder people. Because another thing is, if your hand is empty, that counts as even for you. So like if your opponent only has even cards, then that's like they're just stuck taking damage. It added a level of inevitability, essentially, where it's like, look, this card was going to kill you eventually. It may have been nerfed a bit too hard. Notice it dies to a single saboteur now. So Tufaka is somewhere very happy because, you know, that's what he runs. A single saboteur kills the card. People have suggested maybe upping the durability to just 8, just so it doesn't die from a single one. It might see a slight durability buff before the launch, but I don't think much else will change. I think we wanted it to be in a spot where it's good against Rune. Yes, this card did get the CEO of Rhino to yell at Tufaka because he was complaining too much. This is accurate. Yeah, and so like Arrow says, you could manipulate your hand and be aware of what your opponent had pretty well. Like it wasn't even like RNG. Like you had a better chance of getting it most of the time than not getting it. Unless I think like you know, for instance, Riss miss against me like 7 times in a single game. I heard that Tempest once rolled it like 12 times and never got it. So like some people are not good gamblers and should not gamble. It's a fun card. It will beat very slow players. Like Rune is probably going to lose to this card more than anyone else when the expansion hits. You know, Rune likes to take his time. Rune likes to have an empty hand or like a hand with a single card in it, and it's a forgeling so they can see the cost. It will beat people like Rune. Besides that, it's too slow. You have to play it on turn 4. You don't get to play anything else, so it's too slow and it dies a bit too easy. But it's definitely a fun card. I could see like Laser also losing to this. But you know, the people that really take their time. I would like to see it buffed like slightly, but not too much. It was way too good in its earlier iterations. Next, we have Auspicious Forecast. This was spoiled by KG's own Arrowbear. He wrote a very good article about it. You can read that on Kryptik Gaming's website, which is there. We were a bit disappointed that they did not rename it to Forecast like FOUR. This card is a green card, single gem, 1 mana green card. You add 4/4 Fanatical Phantoms to your Boneyard. That's all this card does. People pointed out, you know, this can work with Journey of Souls. This can obviously work with, like, Necro. Yeah, you know, obviously Necro wants to bring back big things a lot of times, but this type of card can really help too. People love to say that it works with Koshe, which I think is probably a detriment to the card because now you're playing Koshe. But yes, it does bring Koshe out of your graveyard. It's a cool card. You want it early in the game, and it is a rare, so that's something to note. But it can do a lot of cool things with your graveyard. Yeah. It is a spirit spell, so it can be drawn off of Gloombringer. It's a very interesting card. I think it'll see a lot of like interesting type play. we'll have to really raid the tombs fodder. See, this is perfect for Izzy because Izzy refused to raise the tombs if she has a single unit in there, but now she won't feel as bad because it's just phantoms. Rose has some crazy ideas. Rose says you can play this off Bell. Then on your next turn you can play Reincarnation and get all of them back for free. It's a good card. Obviously, it's not a card that you just throw into your deck. It's definitely a card that, like, the deck needs to be designed around playing it. The art is very cool. I really like the art. There's definitely some things you can do with it. Arrow talks a lot about it in his article. I'm going to put it as a B for now. Just because it adds four 4/4s is okay in your boneyard. And it does only cost 1 mana. So you don't lose a whole lot of tempo play in this thing. And it can really start to combo with spirits. Yes, so let's discuss. There are 3 phantoms in the art. Originally, the card only gave 3 phantoms. We legitimately asked them if they could just add another phantom to the graveyard. Because, like, it says, oh, put 4 4/4s into your boneyard. And I think people legitimately thought, like, in their head, it was actually putting 4 4/4s. I think Merlin mentioned that. I think Riss mentioned it. So, like people were thinking, like, oh, it puts 4 4/4s when it actually was only 3. We asked them if they could just change it to 4, and we also asked them to change the name to Forecast with an FOUR. They did one of the 2. So, it now puts 4 phantoms into your boneyard. Yeah, as I mentioned, spoiled by Arrowbear. Very good card. Great art. The article he wrote about it is very good and talks more in depth about the type of things it can do. So yeah, check out the article. Next, we have Triennial Patrol. Triennial Patrol is a 5-cost orange card. It is 2 gems. It is common. It awakens. It creates 2/2 Triennial guards in unoccupied adjacent lanes. It has Forge. This and the guards are created with Slayer 2. Triennial Patrol is very good. That is a lot of stats for 5. The card is very good. It dies to clap. Obviously. It's probably better than Chimera, as Days mentioned. It's common. This means you can play this card 4 different times in a single game. It is a very good card. It essentially provides you, like, what is that? Like 13 stats for 5 mana? Like, 13 stats is a lot of stats. Its only downside is that it dies to, clap, essentially, or magmatar. It's also cool when it combos with, like, blue-orange. It can come out and put some of its things on enchantments. That's really good, because then suddenly they're scary. It's good if it can combo on, like green enchantments as well. You think about the card I showed earlier, Home Field Advantage. If you put this in the middle of Home Field Advantage, everything has +1/+1. Suddenly, these cards are very strong. Apparently, Nazca really likes this card. No one actually knows what Nazca likes. The card is very good. Okay, so you can clear things. I mean, that's like saying that 7 Ring isn't good because it can die. Like, the card is very good because it's a common as well. You can play this card and still play other cards. I do think it really wants to be in decks with enchantments. I think it wants to be in a deck with enchantments usually, because Zealots don't usually go up this high in mana. But it's a very good card. I get close to putting it in S tier, but I think I slot it into A. Very good card. I think it'll see a lot of play. I think anyone who thinks it's bad is then going to complain about the card after it beats them a few times. This card was spoiled by Mythgard Hub, so another shout out to Mythgard Hub. Next, is Beacon Banner. This card was spoiled by Min-Maxer. This card is almost useless. This was the image that was on Hub. Yeah, so this is Noah's fault. Either way, the card is not that good to me. Let's read it. So it's a 3-cost orange card, single gem, an artifact. It does stack. Oh, good. At the end of your turn, if your minions have made 3 or more attacks, all your minions get +2/+0. That's not that good. I guess it's better than Notarized Reality. And Notarized Reality might be better. I don't know. So the buff is like permanent, or like, you know, until they leave. It's not, the buff isn't permanent, but it doesn't last a single turn. So it doesn't just last a single turn. For this card to be good, you have to have 3 minions all attacking. 3 minions attacking is quite the feat, right? Yeah, the coolest part about this is the robot centaur. Like, we don't know what's up with him. Yeah, the animation is kind of cool. It's true. So, you can't play this on 3, really. Right? Because there's a good chance you don't even have 3 minions swinging on turn 3, right? And if you play it before then, like, there's a chance it dies. It's a waste of a turn a lot of times. And once again, if you have 3 tokens attacking, not even tokens, 3 minions attacking, that means like there's a lot out there, right? So either you're so far ahead that you have 3 minions that can all attack on the same turn, or like you're running some low to the ground shit that's just gonna die the next turn anyway. Like you're attacking with like a bunch of like, you know, 1/1s or something. The card is the definition of win more. Like a bunch of 1-drops are not gonna win you the game. It's too slow. It is just too slow of a card. Rune is like the only person I think that thinks this card is good. Like, everyone else has said it's not a good card. Rune thinks it's good, but I've yet to see Rune say it, like, prove it's good. He's like, oh, it just goes in orange-purple. And I don't know what that means. I don't even know if it's good in Pauper. Pauper doesn't rely on, like, tokens. Pauper relies on, like, big bombs, right? Like, isn't that the whole thing of Pauper? Is, like, the first one to get to the biggest card and trading a lot of times? Like, you don't have wide boards in Pauper. So no, I do not think the card is good. I don't think it's good in Pauper. I think it's a win more card. Like if you could have played, what's the Clarion, Parsa Clarion, and it would have been better for you. Do I put this in F? Yes, because it's not as good as these 2 cards. But until Rune kicks all of our asses with it, we're going to keep it in F. If the expansion rolls around, Rune brings out this orange-purple deck he's only ever talked about, no one has ever actually seen. If he does all this, and, you know, starts beating us all up, then we can all say, oh, we all were wrong, you were right, Rune. You had the power of G. If not, Rune has to play red-orange. Alright. Did I mention who spoiled that one? I don't remember. I think I did. It was spoiled by Min-Maxer. Yeah, I mentioned. Next, we have Borrowed Glory. This was a card spoiled by KG's Tempest. It is a red 1-cost spell, single gem. You choose one of your minions. It gets +1/+1 for each of your other minions, and then they each get -1/-1. I think I would rather just play... What's that card? I do not think this card is that good. Hysterical Strength. I think I'd rather just play Hysterical Strength. Like, Hysterical Strength is more likely to hit, because sometimes you don't have out minions. Yeah, you know, Hysterical Strength goes away at the end of your turn, but oftentimes that's all you need it for. You know, you're not trying to buff forever. This card, to me, is just not that good. It doesn't... Okay, so what this card used to be, is it used to just give Frenzy. For 1 mana. And it was stupid broken, and we all broke it within the first 3 hours and then agreed not to play it. It's not very good now. I don't know what they would need to do to make it better. But as of right now, it doesn't seem good to me. -1/-1 is a big deal for a lot of red cards, right? Like -1/-1 is the type of thing that kills a lot of red cards. And you might not be able to afford that. I don't know if it's the type of thing you want. I also think that it's just like if you're sacking cards to give attack, then the better card to use is Bouffonia. Bouffonia is a very good card. I still think it's a very good card. I do not think this card is that good. Yeah. I was going to say this. It's funny that Steph said that. That was exactly what I was about to say. Is it could go in Wholesome's deck, where it's got carnivals and it's got Orpheums and it's kind of got like a lot of like sacking going on with like Oak and the Cadejos and like all that stuff. It could maybe make its way into that red-yellow, like essentially aristocrat style deck. Yeah, I think it could find a home in there. I do not think it will appear much anywhere else. As a surprise buff on occasion, it might be okay. I don't think it's... I'll say this. I think it's better than these three cards. I don't think it's as good as these two. So I'm going to still put it in E. It's like the low end of E, the high end of F. This is all the cards that have been spoiled thus far. Would you guys like another one? I will say right now, the card I was given to spoil, it's S tier. Stormseer is a 3-cost blue minion, 2 gems. She is a 2/3. The Awaken effect. Reduce the mana cost of enchantments in your hand by 1. So whatever enchantments you have, they get reduced. Secondly, whenever you create an enchantment, you deal 1 damage to minions in the opposing 3 lanes. It reduces cost of things in your hand, and then can also then deal damage by those things that you play. This card is very good. I think this card is S tier. It's a 2/3, so like Arrow said, it does a lot of stuff, and then it requires some effort to kill. Like it's not an easy card to kill because of the 3 health. Lanes opposing her. Yeah. Well, yeah, it is great. It's a very good card. I think it's S tier. I think it's one of the best cards in the expansion. I think any blue deck should probably run 2. And yeah, it reduces the hand. It reduces the hand like permanently. Like it's not just that turn. Permanently is not the right word, but like as long as it stays in your hand, the cost is reduced. I would not be surprised to see this card eventually maybe get nerfed somehow. As of right now, the card is very good. People have played it a lot in blue. People have played it a lot in orange because of Sandscape. So Sandscape is essentially 3 enchantments that come down. Stormseer plus Sandscape is, like Day said, a Magnetar on turn 4. That is a 2/3. That is a very good card. And yeah, not making it not work with ephemeral enchantments might be a good place to go to nerf the Sandscape interaction. Yeah, card is very good. I think the card will see obviously loads of play. I think it'll be in pretty much every blue rainbow deck. And I think it is S tier. And I think most Q mode people probably agree with me as far as it being S tier. Very, very good card to me.